Hello, everyone. Welcome to our radio show and podcast. Penny Worley, a good friend of mine, an incredible auctioneer with Worley Auctioneers out of Ohio. Welcome to our show, Penny. Wonderful to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me, Anne.
Penny is one of the most renowned and well-known auctioneers. Not only does she do personal property, real estate, but she also does high caliber FDIC special contracting and auctions, and has done so for decades. So she's an incredible expert and authority in the world of auctions and appraisals. And I wanted to welcome you to our show and have you share a little bit of your knowledge when it comes to the benefits of auctions when someone is downsizing.
I'd be glad to.
Thank you. So Penny, let's start off with what can you sell in an auction? What can you and can't you sell in an auction?
You can pretty much sell under the personal property umbrella anything that belongs to your person. And it could be in your business or in your home. Basically, any asset that's not real estate, whether it's cars, paintings, furniture, equipment. Personal property is a big brush. It covers a lot of assets.
And then we've got the personal property division, as well as someone who's downsizing if they have not entered into a contract for a traditional sale. Obviously, a real estate auction is also a wonderful and preferred method of selling real estate as well.
Well, when people are downsizing and even before they list their home, or they're getting ready to list their home, and they've been in their home 30, 40 years, it's overwhelming because there's stuff in the attic. If they have a basement, maybe they've inherited generations of things they haven't opened, and they're starting to become overwhelmed. And their question is, how can you do this and how does it work? Many business models are, we sell on site. On site means we're selling at your home or your business. We show up and we prepare everything, make it auction ready. We may rearrange some rooms to make you more comfortable while we're doing the process, but we typically will do a free consultation first to meet with the client to see if this is a fit. And then there's a timeline of start to finish. Usually it's 30 days. It begins with coming in the home, photographing, cataloging, arranging, sorting by, categories of like items, paintings, rugs, furniture, etc. We can sell it all the way down to the garage items, but we come in, photograph and tag and create that catalog. Once the catalog is created, then we start building their event on our website. They have their own web page, and our business model is online because today people are busy and the bidders can bid while they're skiing. They can bid while they're traveling for business. There's an app on the phone. It's definitely the way to go, and so effortless for the seller because everything is taken care of in turnkey.
So I'm just going to slow it down for 1 second because that was a lot of information there, my friend. I know, right? So as auctioneers, and especially, there are two types of auctions. Let's just clarify that one aspect. In the past, on-site live auctions were predominantly a way of selling assets. But in today's world, especially post-pandemic, and you, the queen of online auctions, have been selling online for decades. But now with selling items online, right, you're able to create the catalog. We're able to market the asset to specialized buyers, whether it's a home that's a value of $400,000 or it's a home that's $4 million, right? They're going to have different assortment of collections, valuation, and types of items. And the benefit to an online auction is, I think, the fact that us, and as well as other firms are able to specialty market that asset to the right audience and have a reach that's both local, national, and international.
Yeah. And it's confusing for some people because early in my career, I used online auctions to sell worldly assets, things that we wanted to reach Europe, and they were real specialized, and the local market couldn't absorb all of that, whether it was a collector car or a porcelain animaton doll. That's initially how we used online. But today there are so many people downsizing, and it's an overwhelming amount of
Mhm.
just home furnishings.
Right.
And sometimes people say, well, what will not sell? What will sell? The beautiful part about doing on-site versus gallery style is a gallery auctioneer who's going to pick it up is going to be more selective, pick the low-lying fruit. When you do it on site, online, the buyer will buy pretty much everything, and you can categorize it. And I was telling a client the other day, if you're a parent and you're getting your child ready for college, you may want used furniture just to start up a household or a first time home buyer. But then you also have this beautiful painting that you want to get out to the world to have somebody buy. And
Mhm.
so most of your assets will be sold locally, but the specialty assets will be sold in a more national level.
Yeah. And I think there's something really important is the convenience, right? I think, as well said, right, when they're able to sell the assets directly from the home,
Mhm.
right? Couple of advantages. One, when the auction items move from the home to a gallery, there's a potential of damage. There's potential of long-term, you don't know when the item's going to be cataloged and featured in their next event. But when it's a specialty sale and all the items in the home are cataloged and being sold, from the personal property, right? The furniture, the accessories, the tchotchkes, the candlesticks, the items in the garage, as you said, items that might be, whether it's in a theater room or even a wine collection, or it could be specialty items, right? Everything in that home can be featured, cataloged, and sold in a very systematic, organized, and profitable way for sellers.
Absolutely. When you start quoting what it costs to wrap it, pack it, put it on a truck, unload the truck, set it up in a gallery, it's thousands of dollars. It's very expensive to move it and then track it down, make sure it doesn't get damaged. You're handling it multiple times. So there's a great benefit because people see it in its original setting. And the idea of an estate or downsizing gives provenance, and
Right.
people want to see where it comes from and actually see it in that setting where it belonged originally. It gives people more validation and trust of where those assets came from.
Absolutely. And can you talk about what is the distinction and difference between a tag sale, an estate sale, and an online auction?
In the auction industry, most typically we're carrying a lot of insurance, a lot of liability insurance. We're licensed and bonded, required to have continuing education, lots of levels of yearly knowledge and licensing accreditations. A tag sale person is typically not governed under any umbrella and could just be any person that shows up, and they could take off with your money and there would be no recourse.
Right.
And then they're setting prices. The beautiful part about an auction, and I always tell people, why do you think like Marilyn Monroe or Elvis's items go to the great auction houses? They're expecting it to bring a level of price, and there's no way you can put a price on that,
Mhm.
especially if you're selling a home that maybe has a lot of nostalgia or has a prominent name. Somebody wants to buy so and so's, even if it's a friend, they're like, oh, I loved that
Yeah.
place. So you can't put a value on that. And so that a lot of times things are underpriced and given away, where with auction, the price goes up. It's a competitive bid situation.
So let's break that down. A couple of things you just said, very important. Auction firms, for the most part, in most states, are licensed. They have
Mhm.
to have a license, just similar to a real estate agent or a broker would. They have to have an escrow account where the funds are deposited into an escrow account, which makes it safeguards that, sale for the seller, right?
Mhm.
So there's that versus estate sale companies, tax sale companies. There are no governed accounts where the money goes, right?
Correct.
There's also reporting requirements, how the sale is reported back to the seller. So there's a lot of rules that we as auctioneers have to follow and mandate, which is a good thing for sellers. So, not necessarily one over the other, but it's important for our listeners to understand what the legal backing to an auction firm is, and what really doesn't exist, and what we sometimes call the wild, wild west for, tax sales and estate sales. There are some good companies out there. But again, we encourage everyone to do their due diligence to the company that they're going to be selecting, and to make sure that they make the best choice that is for them and their local market. So talk to us about what you started to say, Penny. In regards to, so we talked about the trust account, we talked about the sales, right? So talk about pricing, the difference between pricing, how an auction pricing is done, and how a tag sale pricing is done, or
Yeah.
estate sale.
Right. People get a little nervous because on our website, we start everything at $1. We don't tell people where to start, but any auction, a live auction, you may throw out a number and you keep descending until somebody throws out a bid, and then you stay incrementally, and our software stays in increments. I'll give you an example. I sold a commercial piece of real estate last year, and it had a reserve of 400, which we never disclosed because we never know where it's going to go. That property ended up at 1.7 million, and it started at $1, and then it incrementally moved up in price, and the market decided the value, and money was not left on the table. And that was for a prominent bank in our area. So no one could have anticipated.
Absolutely. So that's an incredible example for a piece of real estate. And actually, we have an auction going on right now. And it's incredible because people, sellers always ask, how is this going to play out? And I always tell sellers, what I think is going to be the best selling item in a collection, to what you might think, or what the owner of the home might think. There's always something that we laugh about at the end of the auction, which became the hit, right? There are items that sell for more than retail at times. There's items that bring in money that we would have never expected, or particular value. So things really work out. But I always talk about looking at the way that an auction catalog ends up in its entirety, right? The solution is that most everything sells in the home, versus having items cherry picked, right? Because there are galleries that might come in and want to cherry pick, where they take 20% of the items and then you're left with the other 80%. But overall, when a seller can sell everything from the items in the garage, the items in the home, to the basement, to the attic, to the holiday decor pieces, right?
Vintage clothing. I mean, it could be so many different things that you think aren't valuable. And it's a roller coaster ride. The prices are up and down. And I always tell people to look at the end of the roller coaster, not the beginning. Look at the bottom line, not how we got there, because it is what we think. It's an emotional spend for some people. And some people may pay more for a home good item, that was bought at a very discount price just because they loved it and it matches their decor. You can't put a price on that.
Absolutely. So in the auction business, as they say, it doesn't matter where you begin, it's a matter of where you're going to end up. And
Yes.
somehow magically, when a sale is properly marketed and you put it in front of the right audience, it magically works out every single time. So it's a great system. It really works well, not only for the personal assets, but as we talked about real estate, right? So talk to us about, you did mention the real estate, and you did mention valuation. So I think a question that we always receive about auctions is, what if it sells for, $5 or $1, or if it's a piece of real estate? What is the difference between an absolute auction and an auction with a reserve? If you can talk to us about that.
In most states, if you don't announce that it's absolute, it's assumed to have a reserve. So therefore it can be protected. But in general, household furnishings, we don't reserve an item unless there's a special car. Today, we did an auction with 2 vintage Porsches and some really cool German memorabilia. And none of those assets had a reserve and they brought what they should have. But if you have $100,000 car, certainly we're going to let you put a reserve on it. If it's sofas and tables and chairs, no. It has to be a more important asset. But, I was telling someone the other day, they're like, well, what if it only sells for $1? And I said, well, what commission would I make and what benefit would it be to me not to protect you? If I thought your item would bring $1, we certainly probably wouldn't take that auction. So there has to be enough what I call meat in the house. And so there's always a level and people want to know, well, do I have enough? And as long as there's enough to bring a crowd to your event, it's the expertise of the auctioneer to make sure there's enough there to sell that everything will find its way. But certainly if there's a Picasso, a Lamborghini, there's a more important asset, we will put a reserve on it. We don't typically announce those or start those. The market will find its way on those items.
Yeah, and I think again, the reserve is there for people to sometimes on very high-end specialty items or specialty items that is mutually agreed upon can have a reserve, but it's certainly it's used far and in between for personal assets, but for real estate, right? But for real estate, it's something that can be there for the seller. It doesn't have to be necessarily disclosed. It works well because the reserve can let everybody sleep at night if it's the right project where they know that they're not going to sell below that amount. But at a competitive bidding market, talk to us about the advantages of selling real estate at auction and perhaps having a reserve there that's non-disclosed. What are the benefits?
Well, the number one benefit is that there are no real estate fees. The buyer pays the commission, and that commission is covered through what's called a buyer's premium. And out of the buyer's premium, we pay a buyer's agent. If another agent brings us a buyer, we sometimes will pay for marketing, depending on the value of the property. Marketing budget could be separate from that. But that would be like the bid price plus the buyer's premium equals the total purchase price. So the buyer is not paying commission and they're able to sell the property in 30
The seller's
days.
not paying commission. I'm sorry if you can
Exactly,
clarify.
yes. Thank you.
The seller's not
The
paying.
seller's, yes, the seller's not paying commission. Thank you for correcting me. So the seller is being able to sell the property, not pay commission, and they're selling it as is with no contingencies for inspections or financing. A lot of deals are falling through in major cities because of multiple offers. And so they're overbidding and then those deals aren't closing. So if you sell at auction, you're getting a true market value and the person is putting 10% down, non-refundable. And if they can't close, they don't get that money back. So it brings you a more solid buyer because they're not going to hand over 100,000 or 50,000 or whatever the 10% is, unless they know their financial wherewithal to close. And we do encourage inspections prior to the auction, and we do showings by appointment as well as open houses. We give opportunity to see that property, to visually inspect if they want to. But the contract they sign, the buyer, is non-contingent on being able to finance the property or any little inspection, because a lot of inspectors can throw off a deal. A lot of them are not governed.
Yeah, and what, as you and I were talking earlier, one of the benefits of a real estate auction is the fact that the due diligence that a potential buyer might put into place, if they want to do an inspection, they're welcome to do so, but they get to do that before they bid or before the auction ends, right? So it takes that question mark out, because in a traditional contract or negotiation, there's usually an offer that is made, a contract that is written between the buyer and the seller. Then for them, typically the buyer then has 7 to 10 days to bring in an inspector, check the roof, check the home, and at times they get to negotiate downwards from there, right? But at auction,
They're buying it as is. And so they can't nitpick or use the inspection contingency to say, well, I don't like this, so I'm out of the deal. Boom, it's done. So quite often deals are falling through because they use the inspection
Traditional
contingency.
sales are falling
Yeah.
through, right,
Yeah,
right.
traditional. And it's because we're still in a fairly hot market in most cities.
Mhm.
And that's due to lack of inventory, which is all the more reason to not set it at a certain price because the market will decide what the value is. But to have a cash buyer or someone that's a solid buyer and can close in 30 days is a wonderful thing for a lot of people if they're moving, downsizing. Health is important. They don't have 6 months. Time is of essence. And so it fits very well for that client.
And if in a good auction or in any auction, right, you just need two like-minded people. If they want it, why do assets sell for what they're worth or even higher? And the reason is if somebody has the whereabouts and they want something, they will pay for it. So a lot of times I think people have the misconception that things may not bring value, or they're worried about one side of the equation when it comes to selling at auction. But I think it's important for people to understand there's also an upside to an auction, right? The other side of the pendulum is if somebody wants it, and at the end of an auction, there's something called an auto extend, which is great, right? Somebody thinks they can bid and they're going to get the best, they're going to bid last minute. They think they're going to do a sniper bid. They're going to win that bid. But for most auctions, right, it extends for a few minutes after that bid ends, and it gives the other person an opportunity to bid, especially to rebid. And the price gets to escalate upwards in an auction.
And an experienced auctioneer is going to use a software that has at least a 5-minute extension. And that would be emulating a live auction. As long as I have someone bidding in front of me, I'm not going to drop the hammer. So with the software, it allows that activity to keep going as long as there's interest.
Right.
And you maximize for sure.
The auto extended bidding, and it allows you to realize a higher price. So that is absolutely a wonderful opportunity for sellers to have. And again, they can have a secret reserve in place that's not disclosed, and the bidding can continue and it will sell.
It's important, Anne, to know that when you're signing with a reputable auctioneer who is also a real estate agent, they're signing a listing contract. The only difference is they're listing it to go to auction, and it can be put in the multiple listing, and it doesn't go in with a price. It typically goes in at 0, but you have a written reserve to protect the seller that you can't sell for less than. Even if it comes close, you still get the deposit. You write up the contract, you present it to the seller, and they have 24 hours to accept, reject, or counter. And that's very important for the seller to know that they are protected.
Absolutely. It's a great opportunity and a great way of marketing an asset, selling a property that might need to be sold as is in a market, right? As you said, even though we have a shifting market with rise in interest rates, with some uncertainty in the market, it's an absolute excellent way to sell assets because it's an as is, no contingencies, a lot of time, no financing, and they get to kind of buy, sell the asset for what it is. And it's a great way of taking away the pain, right? So as the downsizing coach, what do I find to be the most important? And I think why we as auctioneers that have a full service package that we offer clients is the convenience.
No hassle factor. You hand over the project to a professional and they take care of everything. In a traditional listing situation, there is a lot of haggling. And if somebody's taking a whole household of furniture and they're trying to sell it and have to deal with those pieces individually, that can be an absolute nightmare, especially if they have really cool collections. They need specialty marketing those assets. It's an overwhelming and daunting task. Say that 100 times.
Yes. And a lot of times traditional agents would not have the knowledge base. They don't have the connections and they don't have the systems in place, right, to deal with the furniture, to deal with the real estate, to deal with the art and the personal assets and all of the other elements that are in place. So working with a firm that can potentially help you on both sides is also a wonderful way of being able to sell not only the real estate, but also the personal assets. And talk to us about a little bit back to the personal property, right? One of the questions that we always receive, and I know you do as well, it's about the shipping. You know, when we have buyers that are not necessarily local, how do you deal with that?
We provide a couple of local third-party shippers. We don't handle the packing because of the liability. So for instance, if it's a classic car or any car at all, we may have someone on there that can trailer that vehicle. If it's a piece of art, most people aren't shipping big items like sofas and things like that. They're shipping watches, jewelry, paintings, crystal, things like that. And so we'll have a third party listed on our website, and the buyer will fill out a third-party release, releasing the item to their third party, allowing someone else to pick it up on their behalf. So, and there's a misconception that you're shipping every item in the house, but you have what's called removal or pickup day, and that happens the day after the bidding ends. And then we have a sign-up software where the buyer puts their name in a slot and a scheduled pickup to come physically get their items, or maybe they'll fill out a third party to have a neighbor or mover come and pick up their items. But not everybody's like shipping far away. They may have, a company that's like furniture moving, pick it up locally.
Yep. But the most important part of that is the seller is not responsible for that, right? So it's a carefree, organized, systematic way of not only selling the items, but also having the removal, right? There's going to be software for them to organize a time slot that they want to pick up the items. So there isn't a lot of traffic in front of the home, right? And it's a great system to have in place, along with using third-party shippers. We also have third-party shippers. We also work with our local UPS store that might come, and we send referrals for clients that might be in California that bought a piece of china that might complement what they currently have, or it's something that they've always dreamed of, right? So it makes it very convenient, and it makes it pain-free solution for the family and the individual that is downsizing. Let's talk about, I actually, right before at about 2:00 today, I had a phone call from a family member where they're moving the parents into assisted living. It's a 4-floor luxury townhome, and they don't know what to do with the real estate yet, but their intention is to first get the property cleared out. And it's incredible, again, the convenience of how the auction process can immediately, a professional can come in, talk to us about how the convenience of all of that can look, what that might look like.
There might be a lot of organizing. Usually I recommend that you remove anything that you're going to take to your new place or anything personal, and then we'll come in and organize first and get it auction ready. And you may have collections of books. We'll separate the ones that are valuable versus the ones that need to be sold by the box. These are called box lots or treasure lots. Same thing with kitchenwares. We can sell all of that. We may separate, if you have a Le Creuset set or something like that, those individual items will sell high, but your everyday dishes need to be grouped. So we'll come and highlight with a big light box, and we'll do jewelry and small items, and categorize things in the catalog. So we're taking everything from A to Z. When we get to the garage, we know that people will pretty much buy anything. You have a lot of different buyers for every asset class. People love lawnmowers and gas grills and TVs and tools and rakes and shovels. It can all be sold. That's even more convenient because who wants to move that to a gallery? It's far too expensive. And so there's no hassle factor to have everything sold in your home, to do it the auction way online.
I think being outside the Washington, D.C. area for our main office, I remember getting a phone call after an open house. I went to visit with a neighbor. They had us go visit into their home. And as I walked in, she was giving me a tour of the house. And she pointed over to a box of items that they were going to be donating. And I looked over And I said, what is this? It was a beautiful Asian piece, porcelain piece that was in there. I said, how did you acquire this? And first of all, where is this box going? She talked about how it's going to be going to the local Salvation Army, because her daughter's friend was an agent, came over and told her that nothing really has value anymore and that she should be getting rid of everything.
Oh my goodness.
So, it's one of those things that, how do you tell a client, and she said, oh, it was a pair and we've already given the other pair away.
Oh,
It was a beautiful piece that had great value, and it breaks your heart. How do you tell someone, you just gave away
right.
enough that could have furnished your next condo that they were building in Florida, right? So there's great value in items, and we always tell individuals that are listening, bring in the professional, let them walk through the home with you before you start to make decisions about what to give away and what not to give away. There's a lot of information out there that is misinformation, that there is no value to assets, but Penny and I are here to tell you
There it is. That's right.
they're
It's
not
how,
only
it's how I sell my own things,
absolutely. There not only is there value, but it's a preferred way of selling, and it's an easy, simplified way of downsizing and monetizing. Whether you need that money or not, you can choose to donate, the funds to family members, to your grandchildren, let it be seed money for your next home or investment, right? But you have an option. And something that I'm passionate about is, seeing families that are upgrading their home, right? We see families all the time that come to auction pickup, and it melts my heart because something that had served one family for decades, right? And their children are now in college. And it's beautiful to see a family that might have stepped up into a larger home and now wants to create that kind of experience. And they're coming in and furnishing their new home from things from someone else's home. It's an absolutely beautiful thing to see things that are loved being passed down from one generation to the next. And instead of going to landfill.
Right. I mean, repurposing is very important. And if you're into decorating and being eclectic, there's so many treasures out there, and so many people downsizing. So you hate to see that things aren't being repurposed.
Right. And even right now, somebody mentioned to me this morning, oh my God, did you see how records are coming back and how record collections are picking up in value? And there's certain things, vintage clothing, obviously. So there's a lot of value in items that you might have stashed away in your home, whether you know it or not. I think our big takeaway is for your consideration is to really bring in the right professional to get those opinions, to understand how you can monetize them, simplify the process from A to Z, and make it a pain-free and enjoyable process to downsize instead of dragging it out. As it's like pulling off the Band-Aid. Working with the right professional is the most important element to all of this.
Absolutely. Turn assets into cash the auction way.
In the auction way, that's right. There's a great resource that I like to share, the National Auctioneers Association. There's an association where you can go and find local auctioneers that are members, as well as other ways of state associations where you can go on their website, Ohio Auctioneers, Virginia Auctioneers Association, Florida Auctioneers Association, or wherever you are in the country, to find professionals that are part of their local association, and for you to have resources to know who to work with. Is there any other takeaways that you wanted to share with our listeners?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit, Anne.
I think so. We will have Penny's contact details at the end of our show notes. And you tell us where you're based out of, Penny.
I'm based out of Greater Cincinnati, Ohio. I've done auctions in 33 states, including Puerto Rico, and I'm licensed in multiple states as I'm speaking to you from Florida today.
Out of your beautiful home in Florida. So thank you, Penny, for joining us today. Wishing you the wonderful best. Please send my love to your incredible husband. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you so much.
Take care. Thank you.